Hi guys, today we're going to be talking about applications of percents, and now we're really getting down to the meat and potatoes of the learning goal. So remember, our learning goal is I can solve real world problems involving percents, including simple interest, tax, tips, discount, commission, markup, and percent of increase or decrease. And so you'll see today we're going to actually start addressing some of those things, some of those examples in the learning goal directly. Okay, so tax. You guys have probably all heard of tax. There's sales tax, which is what we pay on non-food items when we buy something. And those taxes go to the state and local governments. And so how do we find tax? How does the store find tax when they do it? Or how do we estimate tax or figure out what it is? So we want to find the purchase price. So if we're buying more than one thing, we want to add up all the prices before tax. So we find one price, so we're not calculating tax on a whole bunch of different things. So we add up all the prices, and then we're going to find sales tax using our trusty proportion over here. And then we're going to, if we need to know the total costs, we're going to add the sales tax to the purchase price. Now, with all of these real world example problems, you have to look at the problem really carefully. Sometimes they ask you, what's the amount of the tax? In which case you're done after step 2. Sometimes they ask you to find the total cost, in which case you have to take your purchase price and add it to the sales tax, and that will give you the total cost. So let's look at this problem down here. It says the price of a bike you plan to buy is $159.99. The sales tax rate is 6%. How much will you pay for the bike after tax? So that's asking me for the total price. The total price, the price of the bike plus the tax. So find the purchase price. Okay, purchase price, in this case, I'm only buying one thing. So the purchase price is just the cost of the bike, $159.99. Okay, and then the sales rate, I know, is 6%. When I'm putting this into my proportion, the part is going to be the tax amount. So if I'm doing a tax problem, this is the tax, and the whole is the cost, the original cost before tax. Okay, so again, now I'm just going to cross multiply and figure out the cost there. So that would be 100 t equals 959.94, and so I'm going to divide by 100. Now at this point I'm dealing with money, so I'm probably going to end up rounding. So my tax, if I just divide this out, is going to be equal to 9.5994. So we only write 2 places after the decimal point with money. If I look at this 9, that tells me to round this up. So I have 59 cents rounds up to 60 cents. So my tax is going to be equal to $9.60. So if I want the total cost, so I'm going to take my $159.99 and I'm going to add on the tax, $9.60, and that will give me a total cost of $169.59. And that makes sense because this is almost $10, and so my price has gone up about $10 more than it was before. So here's my final cost, $169.59. So there you go. I'm going to have to pay that much for the bike. And it's a good idea to be able to think about tax before you go and purchase something, because if you go to the store with only $159.99 saved up, you're not going to actually be able to buy the bike. So you need to be thinking about tax when you're planning on buying something. Okay, tip. A lot of times, most people, when they're figuring tip, do not take out their phones and figure out the exact amount of the tip. And it has become really typical to tip 20%, which is really, really, really easy to figure in your head. So we don't even need that proportion for this. I'm going to show you how to figure out tip without doing the whole proportion thing or using a calculator or anything, because usually when we do tip, we figure it out in our head. So the first step is to round the bill to the nearest dollar, and then we're going to find 10%, which is really easy to find in our head. We just take the amount and move the decimal point over one place to the left. So we take our rounded amount because that's a lot easier to work with. If you're figuring out 20%, then you're just going to double that 10% amount. 20% is 2 10%. If you want to figure out 15%, it's a little bit more complicated. You take half of the 10%, that would be 5%, and then you add your 10% and your 5% together. Again, we try to work with numbers that are easy to work with in our heads and just err on the side of tipping a little too much. You know, these people don't make a lot of money. You can give them a little bit of an extra tip. So, your family is on vacation and you're taking a taxi from the airport to your hotel. The taxi fare is $17.85. How much would you give the driver for a 15% tip or a 20% tip? So let's look at this. Let's just go through these steps. So I'm going to do 15% tip going through the steps and then a 20% tip going through the steps. And we're just going to figure this mentally. So $17.85 would round to $18 both times. And if you really wanted to make this easy to do, you could round it to $20. We're going to find 10% by moving our decimal point one place to the left. So I'm going to move my decimal point one place to the left, which gives me $1.80. Now, for a 20% tip, I'm just going to double that. Okay, so for a 20% tip, I'm going to take that times 2, so $1.80. 18 times 2 is 36, so $1.80 times 2 would be $3.60. Now, if you're paying by credit card and you want to do exactly $3.60, great. Let's say you have cash, you probably just give them $4, right? Just round up a little bit. If it's 15%, I need to now take half of $1.80. Okay, so I'm going to do that divided by 2, which is 90 cents. So that's 5%. And now if I want to do 15%, I'm just going to add those together. So $1.80 plus 90%, or 90 cents, is the same as $1.80 plus $1 minus 10 cents. So $1.80 plus $1 would be $2.80, minus 10 cents would be $2.70. So my final tip, if I want to tip 15%, would be $2.70. And if I want to tip 20%, would be $3.60. The last thing we're going to talk about is commission. And a lot of times, middle school people, we haven't heard about commission. Commission is something that salespeople make, and it's a percent of the amount of their sales. So if you work at a business that is trying to encourage you to sell a lot, they may offer you commission. Sometimes you'll be paid only commission. So the only time you make money is when you sell something, you get a percentage of your sales. Sometimes they will give you a certain amount of money per hour or a salaried amount, which just means you'd get paid a certain amount of money per week or whatever. And then you'll also get a percent of your sales on top of that. So when you want to find commission, you just find the commission rate of your sales. So the whole, when we do these problems, will be the amount of your sales. You're not getting paid the amount of your sales. Let me be clear on that. If a business paid you the exact same amount that you sold things for, they would make no money. So it is a percent of your sales that gets added onto your check, or that is your check. So the part is going to be the commission, and usually that's going to be what we're trying to find. Percent's still the percent. Finding commission is easy, so it's just one step, find the commission. Sometimes you have to add that on to how much money you're making, like in the problem below, but as far as finding commission, just take the percent of the sales. And you're done. Let's pretend you work at Hollister, and they pay $7.50 per hour. I don't know that that's really true. I just made it up, but hey, seems like it could be true. So they pay $7.50 per hour, plus you get a 5% commission on sales. So we want to know how much would you make after a 4-hour shift if your sales are $425.13. Remember, that is how much you sold. So customers came in, bought stuff, you helped them, that counts as your sales. So they are not paying you $425.13. The answer to the free response question for today is hole in your sock. All right, here are your free response and multiple choice questions. So pause it up and have a great day when you're done.